Greetings children, welcome back to the biology class. Today we are going to learn the third part of population interactions lesson. Already in the previous class in population interaction you have studied about the positive interactions, that is commensalism, protocooperation, mutualism we have learned completely, and then about negative interaction only about predation you have learned. I taught you only about the predation in the last class. So now we are going to learn the rest of this predation. So scavenging is a kind of, this is the first thing that in today's class. So scavenging is already there in predation, it's connected with predation, but it's a little bit different. Then why I am giving it separate means a little bit different. In predation the organism is hunting for its food, but here in scavenging they are not going to hunt. Generally, basically they won't hunt. What they are eating, what these scavenging organisms are eating is the leftover of leftover flesh or animals which is being preyed by the predators. So this is what the difference between predation and scavenging. These are the very common scavenging organisms. This one is fox, and this is hyena, and this is jackal, and this is crow and vulture. So there are so many organisms, even sometimes even dog is also doing that. So there are so many organisms, but these are the very common wild animals which do this scavenging work. And why we are learning about scavenging in a separate topic, they are different from predators, right, as they are not hunting. And one more thing, scavengers are very important in the environment because they are cleaning up the environment, they are making the environment clean, free from the waste matters which is being dumped over. So that is what we are learning about it separately. And the next one, as per our syllabus, the next second topic of negative interaction is about parasitism. So here in parasitism, what makes the difference between parasitism and predation is basically predation is from killing one organism completely to get the food out. But parasitism, parasites are not going to, the predators are the parasites here. So the parasites are not going to kill another organisms, they will be affecting the organisms, they will be doing harm, they will do the harm and they will get the nutrient from the parasites. So this is what the difference between predation and parasitism. And mostly this parasite, the one which is a highly surviving parasite, or the very good parasite, or the one which can survive for a long time as a parasite, will be doing less harm to the host. Okay, means they will not kill, they don't want to kill, they actually this is what we are saying, that it's not detrimental to the host, they won't kill the host but they do harm. Okay, they do harm. And it's believed that the highly evolved parasite will be doing less harm, or sometimes it may not do even any harm. Okay, that's too rare actually. It will be doing some harm, but in a direct way, or like for example, like if we could say the lice or the dandruff. Okay, so the dandruff or lice which is on our head, that's a kind of parasite. So this parasitic relationship is not going to do much harm. Of course there are some problems, but still we can survive, we can live along. Even with the dandruff a person can live, right? So this is not going to do much harm, but still they are harmful. That's what they are, like highly evolved, they are not going to affect the organisms, the host organisms directly, they are not going to attack the host organisms, but still they will be doing some irritating work. So that's what parasite is going to that's what the parasite is actually doing. And one more thing that's very important is that all the parasites, or almost all the surviving parasites, are host specific, they are very specific to the host. If the host is developing some evolutionary techniques to get escape from the parasite will also do that. So same kind of evolution to make it better suitable with the host organisms. So this is what the host specific parasites generally do. They are very clever, they can co-evolve. Okay, this is what the term we need to use, they can co-evolve means they can evolve as like how the host is evolving, the parasite can also evolve as like the same way to better adapt in the same environment, or with the same organisms they can live further. So there are some parasitic animals that we are going to learn a little bit later, but first we need to go with the plant parasites. So in plants also there are so many different kind of parasites, and there are majorly we are categorizing them under two different categories. They're like complete parasite or total parasite or partial parasites. Okay, total parasites means obligate parasites. Obligate parasites in sense they are mandatory parasites. They have to live as parasites. There is no other option for them. So this is obligate parasites. Here are the examples for obligate parasites. Obligate parasites means if we separate them from the host organism, they can't survive. The parasite can't survive. They are completely depending on the host organisms for their survival. So you may all know this flower. This is Rafflesia. This is the biggest flower in the world, right? So this is Rafflesia. This Rafflesia actually doesn't have all these plants, all these parasitic, obligate parasitic plants. They don't have their own plant pot. Like they don't have their own leaf. They don't have their own stem. They will be producing only the floral structure out of the over the surface, over the soil surface. All the rest of the parts like their haustoria, or they will be having some special structures, haustoria, those sort of structures. All these structures will be found underground. They will be connected with their host plant. Okay, so this is what their survival technique. They are producing only the floral structure. They are producing only the pollen or spores outside. All these kinds of angiospermic plants, so they are producing only their pollen grains, or their fruiting structure will be seen outside the soil. All the other parts will be found beneath the soil, contacting the host plant or deriving nutrients from the host plant. So this is Cuscuta. This is a very common one. You can see that in tall trees it will be like hanging long thread structure. So this is Cuscuta, and this is as I said, Rafflesia, and this is Orobanche, and this is Balanophora. Okay, so Orobanche and Balanophora are the organisms which we could see only in the northern hemisphere. Like we can see that maybe if we are going into some forest, we can see that, right? And the next one is about the partial parasites. In plant parasites, the partial parasites means they do photosynthesis. Of course, these plant parasites, by the look itself, you can identify that they are having their green leaves. Okay, they have their own green leaves, so that means they will be doing photosynthesis. And then why they are termed as parasites? Because they are getting their water and nutrients from the host plant, water and minerals from their host plant. They are found attached with the host plant, and they will be deriving nutrients from the host plant, and then with the help of those nutrients they will survive. Actually, these are a little bit dangerous. Okay, these are sucking all the nutrients from the host plant. It won't allow the host plant to thrive well. The host plant will struggle a little bit because of this parasitic attack. So this is Viscum, and this is Loranthus, and one more example is a sandalwood tree. So sandalwood tree is a parasite. Okay, in nearby our school campus too, we have sandalwood tree. So here in the sandalwood tree, you can see that it's not easy to uproot the sandalwood tree because they are connected with some other plants, some other trees which is nearby. So sandalwood trees are also root parasite. They are partial root parasite. And here in this Loranthus is actually a stem parasite. You can understand that it's a stem parasite. And Viscum, mistletoe, this is also a stem parasite. These two are stem parasites, and sandalwood tree is a partial root parasite. These two are partial stem parasite. Okay, so these are the plant parasites, partial and obligate plant parasites. And the next one what we are going to learn is brood parasitism. So brood parasitism literally means parasitism which is for breeding purpose. There is no definition because it's understood that brood parasitism means parasite at the time of breeding purpose. So the very common, very known example is the quail which lays eggs in the crow's nest. Okay, quail is actually a very lazy bird which don't want to hatch the eggs. So what they are doing is they will be defeating the crow by laying their eggs in the crow nest, as they are very similar to the crow egg. You can see that here this is a real image, and I'm not an ornithologist, so I don't know which one is, but I know about theoretically the quail egg will be a little bit smaller, so I guess these two may be the quail egg, or only this one may be the quail egg, and the others are crow egg. Okay, so this two looks similar, so I guess this two may be the crow egg and this two may be the quail egg. And even when they are hatching, even when they are coming out of the egg, until and unless they produce their own sound, the crow will be producing kaka sound, right? And the quail will be producing nice sound. They used to sing, right? So until and unless they produce their own sound, the mother crow pavam, this mother crow, will not be knowing that it will be feeding this organisms and these young ones. Okay, when it came to know about that, when one of these things starts singing or two of these things start singing, it will know about that this is quail, not its own kid, and then it will just throw it out. Okay, so that's what going to happen in almost all the crows life. All the mother crow used to feel that. So this is brood parasitism. So brood parasitism is just a general thing. Basically they can ask you question from brood parasitism in a 2-mark question. They can ask you, right? And the next one is about animal parasitism. That what is parasitism in, we can see in animals. So in animals there are two different kind of parasitism: ectoparasites and endoparasites. Ectoparasites means parasites which found outside the body. So you can think about that. Ticks, mites, bugs, all those things are just sticking outside the body, or they will be staying outside the body and still they are getting nutrients. Mosquito is an ectoparasite, right? And then the endoparasite is the organisms which go into the host organism, right? There are so many examples, but still we are going to learn only few examples. So endoparasites, Taenia solium is a endoparasite. What is Taenia solium? Tapeworm, right? So tapeworm. And Wuchereria bancrofti, would have heard about the term? Guess. Elephantiasis, right? Filarial worm or elephantiasis is by Wuchereria bancrofti. So that Wuchereria bancrofti used to be in the lymph vessel. It used to be present in the lymph vessel. And Taenia solium will be there in the intestine, and then Ascaris or roundworm, which is also found in the intestine of human, and Entamoeba histolytica, which is an amoeba, right, which is found in the digestive tract. And you would have heard about E. coli. E. coli is a bacteria, right? And then trypanosoma generally, once they asked about trypanosoma in the competitive exam, I'm not very sure about that, maybe in NSTSC exam or in some other exams. Trypanosoma, the presence of trypanosoma is found in the CSF fluid, okay, cerebrospinal fluid of human. So that trypanosoma is actually a little bit dangerous. So trypanosoma is a host which is a parasite which is found inside the human cerebrospinal fluid. That is a kind of endoparasite. So these are the examples for endoparasites. And ectoparasites, you can go with mites, bugs, like bed bug. All those things are coming under ectoparasite. And endoparasite means parasite which is living inside the host organism. And in parasite, one more thing you need to know is they are producing some special structure. I didn't add it here, but you should understand that they are producing some special structure for their survival. They will be developing some haustoria or something while they are penetrating into the host organism. Apart from that, some of the endoparasites like tapeworm, those sort of organisms, they will be having suckers or they will be having hooks. Okay, so there are some special adaptation. You have to, if there is a question connected with that, you have to think about it and then you have to write. Ectoparasites will be developing haustoria sort of structure which are penetrating into the host organism, deriving the nutrient. When an organism is found inside the host organism, they don't want to develop any penetrating structure. They are just getting suckers or hooks to get attached where they are. Okay, so these are the adaptive structures which are found in parasites. And the next one is about competition. The definition for competition. In competition, you have to learn the definition and then you please understand what are all the types of competition. So first, the definition. While you know about definition, competition is generally for when there is a kind of limited resource. In case if we are in a caged environment, in a caged place, you are giving just 1 kg of grass for 4 rabbits, you could see the competition between them. You are giving 5 goats to a caged tiger, or not one tiger, there is just 2 or 3 tiger, you can find a competition between them. So when resources are very limited between the organisms, there we could see one rivalry. So that is what competition. Okay, a fight which happens in between organisms for the sake of limited resource, then that is termed as competition. This competition may be intraspecific or interspecific. Competition can happen between a tiger and lion, or between two tigers or two lions. Okay, so that is intraspecific and interspecific competition. And then there are two different forms of competition, two different forms. So one kind of competition is interference competition. Interference means you can see in a dominant and a recessive competition. If an organism is a dormant one will not be getting the access of the resource. Okay, it will stop the access of resource. How can we say that? Like if you feel like it may not be a good example, but still you can understand that there is a tiger and there is a fox. Okay, you know that the tiger is dominant one, and here the fox is a dormant one, and we are feeding just one goat. We are just feeding one goat into the cage. What will happen? Who will eat the food? The tiger, right? What happened to the fox there? The fox, tiger won't allow. Until and unless it feels stomach full, it won't allow the fox to touch the food, right? So this is what interference competition. Here there is no fighting, there is no war, but still the dominant one stops the access of the food from the dormant one, from the recessive one, right? So this is interference competition. The second one is exploitative competition. Here in exploitative competition, these two tigers with one goat, then that is exploitative competition. What happens? They two will fight first. Let the goat be there, they two will fight. When this fight will get over, one tiger is getting completely tired, or else one tiger got completely torn off into pieces, right? The exploitation has to occur, or else they too will start eating there. They will completely exploit the resource even after the fight, or along with the fight. They will fight and they will eat, right? So this is exploitative competition. So if we want to understand exploitative competition, you have to know that the organisms which are competing for this will be equally dominant, right, of the same category of organisms. And interference means which is happening between a dominant one and also a dormant one, right? These are the two different forms of competition. And the next one is the very important thing in this entire lesson. You have to learn this thing, Gauss competitive exclusion principle. Gauss principle is very important in this entire lesson. Gauss principle. So this Gauss put forth the principle to make competition very clear, or to give a gist what is happening in competition exactly. So when two organisms or two species of organisms can occupy the same niche no two organisms are occupying at the same niche at same time in a particular ecosystem, right? What is it? We are saying that a tiger is there, a lion is there, and deer, a dog, everything is there in an ecosystem, in a particular ecosystem. You can't find two organisms which are equally dominant. Okay, you can't find that. When you feel like lion and tiger are equally dominant, they are not like that. Their characteristics are entirely different. If tiger is completely ferocious and it will be the super strong one, completely fighting for everything, lion is not like that. Lion is not fighting like a tiger. Okay, lion is the one which will be having too much of tricky thing. Like it is, lion is the one which is highly prudent than tiger, right? So it's very tricky, it's very calculative when compared with the tiger. That's why this change in characteristics makes them survive for a long in a particular ecosystem. Okay, so this is what Gauss competitive exclusion principle also says. No two organisms can occupy the same niche at the same time in a particular ecosystem. What is the meaning of the word niche? I have given that here. The functional role of an organism in its particular ecosystem. If you are saying that the tiger is a carnivore, right? Lion is also a carnivore, but there are differences. Okay, if you are saying this Fox is also a carnivore. There are difference between lion, tiger and fox, right? There is jaguar. Jaguar is also a carnivore, but it's not exactly like tiger. There are a lot of differences in its characteristics, right? So this is what niche, their functional role. Even though they are carnivores, their functional role in that particular ecosystem is different. Each and every organism's functional role is different. They are picking characters, or they are picking nature is different. They are all are not depending on organisms which are slowly moving, which are fastly moving. It's not like that. They have their own tactic, they have their own strategy for hunting, for survival. Okay, so this is what Gauss competitive exclusion principle says about no two organisms occupy the same niche. If they are like that, what will happen? They may result in one species to become extinct. One species may go extinct following certain changes. When they follow certain adaptations, they could. But when yes, in competition exclusion principle, we could say that no two organisms can occupy the same niche at the same time. They may result in one species become extinct. They will completely make one organism go out of the world, like extinct, or one organism may be forced to migrate. That means they can move out of that particular ecosystem. They can go survive well in another ecosystem, or they may adjust a little bit so that there is no competition between them, so that they can survive along. So this is what the competition exclusion principle. And now we are going to learn a little bit kind of terms which is connected in this lesson at last. One more negative impact, negative interaction is amensalism. You are just learning only about the term amensalism. So in amensalism, one organism is completely getting affected and the other one is neither benefited nor harmed. It doesn't have any role to play in that particular relationship. That is amensalism. Best known example for amensalism is antibiosis. What is antibiosis? Antibiosis is the production of antibiotic, right? So that is the thing which is commonly seen in microorganisms. One microorganism will be producing a chemical substance which will be drastically affecting the other organisms' survival, other microorganisms' survival. So that is antibiosis. So in antibiosis, what we could see is the microorganism will kill the other microorganism, but this microorganism is not actually getting nutrient from that. This microorganism is getting benefit, like it is getting the food proper. There is no competition. It's just killing the other organisms to reduce the competition. So this is what antibiosis. So how do this chemical basically work? There are some questions asked, like how do this antibiotic generally work? So you should understand antibiotics generally work by doing some correction in the other organism's metabolic pathway. Okay, for example, like it will be producing a chemical substance which will be majorly deteriorating the chemical substance of the other the enemy microorganisms major metabolic pathway. For example, like it can degrade the G3P, or it can degrade the major energy source, like major ATP source, it will be degrading. So any of those metabolism can be broken down and then it will be thriving well. The dominant organism will be thriving well. Okay, so this is how almost all the antibiotics are working. And the next one in amensalism is about mimicry. Mimicry you have already studied that. It's not coming purely under amensalism, but still mimicry is there, and you should understand camouflage is a kind of mimicry. So mimicry is nothing but imitating another organism that we could see in most of the aphids, grasshoppers, insects. Okay, the term mimicry was said by Henry Bates. Henry Bates is responsible for the describing the term. And the very important thing that we need to understand in all this thing, in all this relationship, is why we are learning about, or why all these organisms have all this kind of adjustment. That is basically to maintain a biotic stability or to maintain ecobalance. So from this part, it's like if someone is asking you a question, why all these organisms have such an interrelationship, or why do we know about all this interrelationship, there is nothing wrong in this environment. Naturally, everything is being protected to maintain a clear ecobalance. We are saying that one organism is very dominant than the other one. The rabbits and the goat, those organisms are so poor, these organisms are being killed by the tiger. It's not like that. When rabbit and goat is too huge in number, think about the plants, they are going to kill the plants. So there will be an ecological imbalance. So to stop that, there is a tiger, right? So naturally, the nature is protecting itself naturally. Okay, we don't want to do anything. Let the nature do its own kind of work by itself. So nature is highly protecting one, highly a balanced one. So we are learning all these things to know the nature better. There is an aesthetic sense in the nature. You just go check it and you will be very much impressed with it, right? So that's what the last thing, like biotic stability, is given. So you should understand how nature survives by its own, right? So this lesson gets over. So here in today's class we have learned about scavenging, and we discussed about parasitism, plant parasites, total plant parasite and partial plant parasite, and then animal parasites. Let me go with that. This is total plant parasite, these are partial plant parasite, and this is brood parasitism, and then animal parasites. And then about competition, and in competition, Gauss competition principle is very important. And then amensalism, mimicry, it's coming under a general topic. It's not coming under amensalism actually. It's a kind, some of the mimicry will be coming under amensalism, but it's not actually. And then about ecological balance too, right? And then your homework is learn this lesson completely, including the test your progress column. There is 1 marks, the short answer questions, board exam questions, hard questions, and NCERT questions, everything. Okay, learn it completely. So this week's weekly test or your cycle test will be from this lesson. So you have to learn this lesson completely. Last week's performance was quite good. You all secured good marks. So I guess you to do a little bit better than that. Those who got 9 on 10 has to go with 10 on 10. Okay, so make it as a target for yourself. Do well and get good marks, and stay home, stay safe. Thank you kids, thank you so much.